Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. Today I'm going to review a Pulitzer Prize winner called Night Watch by Jayne Anne Phillips. I thought it was a young adult novel, but it was recommended to me on one of my sites. And then I got it and I'm like, oh, this is not young adult. It has a couple of themes that would be considered adult. However, I did really like it. It's a historical fiction, and it starts off it's in West Virginia, and it starts off with a girl named Connelly. It's Cona, capital Lee, and she's with her papa and her mother, and he's abandoned a younger brother or sibling and infant twins, and they're taking her mother, who he wants them to call Miss Janet. And she goes by Eliza, even though her mother's real name is Eliza. It's a ruse. If there's one theme about this book, there are ruses going on, but it's during the Civil War, and so I think a lot of people made up stories because you had enslaved people moving north and taking on various names, and so I think it's pretty common that people made up their own stories just for their own safety at that time. So anyway, they're going to this lunatic asylum, and she's supposed to tell people that her mother's name is Miss Janet and her name is Eliza, which is not true. But yet she and her mother know, and somehow Papa thinks that they're going to just take them. He just drops them off, and after giving away a younger brother who's not an infant, and then an infant children. And so they dropped them off, and she's supposed to be able to kind of tell them that she's her caregiver, not her daughter. And so they have to keep this ruse up all the time. And so so it goes from 1874 to like 1864. So there's a 10-year span, and it goes back and forth. And so you get to the background. And there's another woman called Dearbla. I don't know if that's pronounced right, but it's Dearblah. And she's the crone, the wise woman in here, who kind of has knowledge of plants and birthing, and she's someone who considers them her family, but she doesn't. She is kind of the protector of them in some ways, and so it's told through her point of view and Connelly's. Once with Eliza, another one with a sharpshooter, and so but mostly it's Connelly and Dearblah telling the story, and then later there's another person called O'Shea that tells the story. And this is the piece I'm going to read is the introduction of O'Shea. But it was one of those novels where I got further into it and I had to go back and I went to look to see something. I'm like, oh yes, I thought that name sounds familiar. And so it all starts to come together in your mind. And I'm not, and it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, but there are some times when I just feel like, oh my gosh, she could have, not, just, it's a person who loves words, obviously, but there are some times when I just thought, I love your language, but, sometimes it's a little bit over the top. But I'm kind of used to that. I've read a lot in my life, so a lot of very much over the top kind of literature, but it's really deserving of the Pulitzer Prize because of the way she structured the book and just the research she had to do to understand something about the Civil War and the violence of it and the mystery of it in some ways, of the question marks that people had, and how many people. And what was interesting about this is that the people in this are, and they were indentured servants. They were Irish, and so that makes it even more interesting to understand that there were people who were also not enslaved but indentured, but they also didn't have freedom because they had a debt that they owed and they had to do that work, and so it's just a little bit eye-opening to find out, like, how people who owed anything or who were enslaved and didn't know anything except they were taken against their will, to basically build up the South. And so there's a little bit of that tension too between the Union and the Confederacy, but I think she does that really well because she's done a lot of research about it. But the real research was about this lunatic asylum in West Virginia, and so it's just really well crafted, and you just have to stay with it. I almost put it down because I thought, and then I thought, no, but I'm not one to quit. So I thought, I want to figure this out. Well, then I couldn't put it down because I was like, okay, I want to find out who all these people are and how are they all connected. Like I said, I think she deserved the Pulitzer Prize. But I was thinking, some of it was maybe, uh, I feel like she could have said it in simpler terms, but that's just me. So the part I'm going to read is when Connolly comes with her mother, Miss Janet, to the lunatic asylum. But I heard the sound of locks opening and bolts sliding, and the door half opened. A tall man, broad in the shoulders, stood looking down at us. He was dressed almost like a train conductor, all in black, and his cap was round, with a round bill. He wore a patch that covered his right eye from brow to cheekbone, with a livid scar beneath. It was not so fearful or unusual then, especially in the towns, to see the bandaged or maimed. They weren't able-bodied and couldn't go back to the farms. So many amputees and injured soldiers from the war, most of them young, survived wounds that killed older men. I could not tell if this man was young. Everyone seemed old to me, and I counted myself among them. I'd not grown up with children. My mother was past her 30th year, and I was more like her sister these years past than her daughter. Papa would call me the old biddy, and her the fairy queen. I made my voice steady. Good day, I said. I have brought Miss Janet for her rest and cure. The staff does not receive at this hour, he said. You must come back after 9. Sir, I'm sorry for the early hour, but we have traveled such a way. I felt myself thrown forward then, for my mother had fallen against me with all her weight. I was half in the entrance, my ribs hard against the marble doorstep, and felt him lift her from me as the door swung wide. He pulled me to my feet with one hand as he shut the door behind us and threw the bolt into place. Then he was carrying her across the round, empty room, so vast it seemed, as though she was a child. I ran after them and with her carpet bag, trying to keep pace. She's faint, I was saying. We've not had much to eat or drink. He'd stopped, though, and put her on a chaise and taken a vial from his pocket. Hartshorn spirits, he said, ammoniac, to revive her. He took the small cork from the vial and held it to her nose. She started and drew in her breath, gasping, and opened her eyes on his face that was close to hers. Her gaze widened as though she knew him. Of course she didn't, but I was grateful she didn't call out or seem afraid. I saw now that his eye patch wasn't made of cloth, but of something harder, rounded tin or metal covered with a felt held in place with a strap. A scar like an angry bloom was on his temple and disappeared under his cap and the shaggy black hair. But she seemed to sense a sudden protection or counsel. So that was the first meeting with the Night Watch. And I definitely think, this is one you want to have on your shelf if you're a high school English teacher. There are, some scenes that there's violence and sexual explicit material, but there's only like 2 that I can come up with. And so I don't, I think it's something to just offer to students that this is a Pulitzer Prize winner. You might be able to do it in book clubs or novel panels, but you would have to probably send home some kind of, consent form for parents to let them know that it's like R-rated. But I think there are others that are way more R-rated than this one. But if you like historical fiction, I think, it's a really great story. And like I said, that she's done a lot of research to understand something about not only the historical context of being, the Civil War. And I think she must have been really passionate about the characters in this novel and know that, some of, it's a possibility, it's historical fiction, but the historical accuracy of the Civil War and the asylum is really remarkable from my perspective. So in that regard, I would say you would really want to read this. And this is for all of my, viewers out there who are not, aspiring to be secondary language arts teachers. But anybody who is an adult would enjoy this read if you like a particular kind of read of historical fiction. And especially if you're someone who loves the Civil War. I'm thinking of my former colleague Brenda. She was a huge fan of Civil War, so she would really like this novel. She's a history teacher, and so I think she'd really enjoy it. But anyway, thank you for joining me today. I will see you next time, and happy reading. Bye.